Message to Washington, look to Maryland. Maryland taxing millionaires, but instead of paying up, more of them are simply packing up, and they're just moving out. According to a new report, more than 30,000 millionaires, or close to millionaires, leaving that state because of tax increases on the rich. And the state is losing out on about $2 billion in tax revenue as a result. Cato Institute's Dan Mitchell not at all surprised. This does fly in the face of what liberals call reason. What happens when they raise taxes?
Well, in the real world, what happens when you raise taxes is that people will take steps to protect themselves from greedy government. And when you live in a high-tax state, and this has happened not just in Maryland, but in places like California, where people move to Nevada, in places like Ohio, where they move to Florida, New York, where they move to New Hampshire, whenever you have a state that's taxing too much, not providing value for the money, you wind up driving away the most productive taxpayers. And what really is amazing about this, if you're a left-winger, if you like big government, this is the last thing you should want to do, because you are driving away the tax revenue when you drive away the rich people.
But if Washington does it, then the only place folks can go is out of this country. And how real is that threat?
Well, it does happen. We saw it with the Facebook guy, and we just saw it with one of Bill Clinton's big campaign donors. Just took off for London, of all places. So, yes, some people do move out of the country, but perhaps even more importantly,
don't you think, Dan, their
money.
I agree with you
money moves out of the
service.
country.
Yeah, but that they're more the exception than the rule, whether it's Denise Rich or any of the top lieutenants over at Facebook who set up shop in Hong Kong, that most resign themselves to staying here. But it gets to the next point of your comment there, that their money could go abroad. Explain how that would happen and what would happen.
Well, their money can go abroad in the sense that all you have to do is get on a keyboard to your brokerage account, click the keyboard a couple of times, and you can begin to reallocate your portfolio to protect yourself against extortionary tax rates. But you don't even need to do that. You can simply decide, living in America, investing only in America, you can pull your money out of productive investments that are taxed and move it to municipal bonds, which are untaxed. So instead of your investments generating growth in the private sector, you're subsidizing the government debt of places like Detroit or the state of California. And you are completely exempt from tax as a rich person when you do that. And that's why we see over and over again, whenever tax rates go up, the rich take these steps to protect themselves. The government oftentimes gets less revenue, or the reverse is true. Why was it during the Reagan years that rich people between 1980 and 1988 paid 5 times as much revenue? It's because the top tax rate went from 70% all the way down to 28%. We made it profitable, or at least we made it less punitive for people to earn and produce and declare income on their tax returns. And guess what? Uncle Sam got more money, which is why the left-wingers should be embracing Reaganomics. But instead, you have Obama, who during the 2008 campaign said he was willing to raise taxes even if the government got less revenue. That, to me, is... my head wants to explode.
But, you know, you can also make the argument, if you are going to raise taxes, if that's the route you're going to go, and the Clinton example is mentioned quite a bit, he was raising those taxes to the top income rate when we were coming out of a recession rather robustly. The markets were just taking off, and he had lowered a whole series of investment taxes and looked very serious about cutting spending. So there were dramatic differences then. I'm just wondering, in this environment, whether you're for raising taxes or not, is now the time to be doing it?
There's no question, with the economy on its back and very anemic, that a big tax increase would just be a kick in the gut for the economy. But I think the argument against higher taxes is just as strong if you're in the middle of a strong growth period, because fundamentally what we're talking about is, do we want bigger government or smaller government? And if you raise revenue, the politicians in Washington inevitably will respond in a Pavlovian fashion by increasing spending. The mere scent of new money will get them on a spending spree. It's like putting blood in the water with hungry sharks. And so if we want to deal with our #1 problem, which is that government is too big and it's doing too much, we need to make sure we don't increase the allowance for the politicians. Because, yes, they will respond to revenue with more spending. That's what we've seen in Europe. That's what we've seen on the state level. And that's what we've seen here in Washington, D.C., America's work-free drug city.
Work-free drug city. That's well put. Dan, you just explained the whole tax and the revenue issue better than the top politicians on either side on the Hill. Dan Mitchell, good seeing you again.